G'day, welcome back to the channel. Why is FPV flying like drugs? Why is it like hardcore drug taking? What's the connection between drugs like heroin and FPV, first person view, flying drones and model aircraft using goggles that let you sit in the pilot's seat, effectively sit in the pilot's seat. Virtual reality, some might say, augmented reality, others might say, and just a hell of a lot of fun and very addictive, most of us would say. The word addiction's in there, but that's not the link between flying FPV and hardcore drugs. I'll tell you what the link is in a moment. But first of all, I want to address some of the comments that were made on a video I posted recently. And people have been saying, not many, but a few people have been saying, you're doing things wrong because you are basically showing people that it's okay to break the rules. And therefore people will go out there, they'll copy you and they will break the rules and they will get into trouble and they will cause problems and they'll endanger people. And on the face of it, that seems like a fairly legitimate complaint. In fact, it's a complaint that CAA aired when I spoke to them last Friday. Now, one of the executives from CAA and I had a full and frank discussion. We agreed to keep this confidential in terms of exactly what was said, but I mean, I can talk about the general thrust of things. And one of the general thrusts was that I think CAA pretty much agree with those comments that if they let me get away with appearing to break the rules, it sets a very bad precedent. It sets a precedent where people may look at my videos and go, hey, the rules don't matter, this guy breaks them, doesn't get pinged, so let's go and break them ourselves. And as I say, on the face of it, this looks pretty legit. I can understand where people are coming from, or can I? Because I don't think it actually is valid at all. And one of the reasons is a concept called greater good. Now let me go back to the drugs things for a moment. Here in New Zealand, under the Misuse of Drugs Act 1975, it's illegal to own drug or to possess drugs, to use drugs, to cultivate or manufacture drugs, to deal in drugs, or to even have the paraphernalia that's used to take drugs. So you can't have syringes and all that sort of stuff. You can't have the little spoons and the little, whatever, I don't know, I'm not a drug person, but you can't have the drug paraphernalia. That's against the law, against the law. It can get you fined or thrown in jail. And some of these drug crimes have mandatory life imprisonment penalties. So very serious crimes. So you would think, okay, we wouldn't want anything out there that would encourage people to take drugs. Yet, let me tell you about something. Here in New Zealand, we have a thing called the Needle Exchange Program. It enables drug users to get clean needles from government-funded sources. Now, the Ministry of Health in New Zealand pays for 3 million clean needles a year to be given to drug abusers, drug addicts. But taking drugs is illegal. How does this work? How can the government say with one hand, you can't take drugs, it's illegal, we'll lock you up if you do, and then on the other hand, give them the paraphernalia, the illegal paraphernalia they need to take those drugs? It doesn't seem right, does it? It's like, surely the government is setting a bad example. The government's effectively saying, it's okay to take drugs, here's the tools you need to do it. So how does this work? This seems even worse than me flying videos or flying and putting videos up that appear to be me breaking the rules. It is a clear case of what's going on. Well, let me explain. What we've got here is a thing called greater good. And what the government, in its wisdom, I've got to say it's a very wise decision, they've decided that if they were to deny drug users the clean needles, and we know that drug users, drug addicts are going to take drugs. Doesn't matter what we do, doesn't matter what laws we pass, doesn't matter what we say, drug addicts are going to take drugs. Rules, laws, regulations don't stop people from doing bad things, they just punish them when they do. So the government has said, you must not have these drugs, you must not take these drugs, you must not have the gear to use to take the drugs. But they're giving out the paraphernalia, the illegal paraphernalia, because they decided back in the 1980s when AIDS and hepatitis became real issues within the drug-using community, if we don't give them the ability to use drugs more safely, more people will die. More people were dying from AIDS and hepatitis and so forth than from the actual use of the drugs themselves. So it was a very sensible thing to say, let's reduce the death toll. Let's at least make sure that because we know they're going to take the drugs anyway, they're taking them without risk of infection. So they, every year, $3 million worth of needles and things are handed out. Actually, it's not $3 million, it's 3 million needles, I made a note here. 3 million needles are handed out to drug users. 3 million pieces of illegal drug paraphernalia are given by the government to people who are breaking the law taking drugs. Is that encouraging them to take drugs? In the way that if I post a video where it appears I'm breaking the rules, it's encouraging people to break the rules? It's a pretty good parallel, isn't it? And I claim greater good as well. If I put a video up that shows me flying under the trees in a park where there's no people and there are no aircraft, and it might appear that I don't have an observer, but I explain to people exactly what's going on, and they can see for themselves that it's only done when this sort of flying is only done when it is safe to do so. Is that not like giving the drug users clean needles? Is that not showing people that if you are going to do this, this is how you do it safely? Because we know, everybody in the hobby knows that everybody who flies FPV flies without a spotter at some stage or another. A lot of people do most of their flying without spotters, just as we know drug addicts take drugs. You can't stop them, the rules won't change it, so how do we make it safer for those people that we know are going to do that? Well, my philosophy is I'm the clean needle guy, I'm the needle exchange guy. I say, if you're going to fly without a spotter, this is what you need to do so safely. And I've already made videos saying you need to have a radio tuned to the local operating frequency for aircraft. And now I'm saying you need one of these, an ADS-B alarm that will alert you when ADS-B equipped aircraft come within so many miles of your location. And you need to have your ears open. And you need to make sure you're not flying where you would find aircraft, which means under the trees, not 400 feet up in the sky. And away from people, not where there are crowds of people playing with balls or having picnics, right? So I am the needle exchange guy. My videos show people how to do things safely because we know they're going to do them anyway. And unless we show them the way to do it safely, they will do it unsafely. And it's a greater harm. There's a greater risk if they don't know what they're doing. So I say to the people that complain that my videos set a bad example, no. My videos show you how to fly safely. That cannot be a bad example. Cannot be a bad example at all. And then there's the issue about whether the rules are fit for purpose. Because I think we all know that everyone that flies FPV, with only a few minor exceptions, has flown or even regularly flies without an observer. Yet where are the incidents? Where are the collisions between drones and aircraft? Where are the collisions between drones and people? Where are the injuries and the deaths that have been caused by this breach of this regulation that take place every day all over the world? Well, there aren't any. The thing is that the people who made these rules were totally unaware of what they were doing. They have not flown FPV themselves. They don't know what it looks like from the goggles. They don't realise that the best seat in the house is actually behind those goggles. Observers, you get a couple of 100 metres out or 100 metres out, they can't see anything. They can't see the drone. They can't. So how can they possibly, look out for dangers and risks? And if you're flying proximity, where you're weaving through trees, well, the drone can disappear into the trees long before it actually disappears from video. So you can be flying and the observer can't see a damn thing. How does it work? How's it improving safety? It's not. So we have to say, and I say quite strongly that the observer rule is out of date. It's outdated. There are occasions when there is no need to use an observer. Now, there are occasions when you do need an observer, and I would never fly without an observer when it's essential to preserve safety. And sometimes it is essential to have an observer to preserve safety. For example, if I was flying in an area where there could be aircraft, perhaps gliders, they don't make much noise. Well, normal aircraft, you can hear them coming, you've got your tools to hear them coming, but there may be a situation where it's possible it could be a glider or something coming. Yeah, you have an observer. Have an observer to look around. Or if you're in an area where there are a lot of people, possibly coming and going, then you might want an observer to make sure that people aren't straying into your flying area, even though that will be very secondary to your own vision through the FPV goggles. So, and certainly you want an observer if you're going to fly at any reasonable distance, such that your model may be far enough away that if an aircraft came into that area, you wouldn't hear the aircraft. So an observer can see several miles into the distance. It doesn't have to be able to see your model, but it has to be able to see where you are flying, so that if an aircraft comes in, which can be seen, he can say, there's an aircraft coming, drop altitude or come back here. That's where an observer comes in. That's when it is essential to have an observer. But certainly close proximity flying, an observer is not essential to preserve safety, and we have proven that over many years of safe flying without them. So this is kind of like other rules that have been on the statutes for years, and they're not enforced because they are out of date. In fact, a good example here in New Zealand is the blasphemous libel law. Now, under the Crimes Act, there was a thing called blasphemous libel, which basically meant insulting a deity, you're calling a particular god a bad name. And that was a crime. It was a crime that could be punished in the courts. The last time a case of that came before the courts was in 1922, because the rule or the law was actually described more recently as being archaic and outdated, and certainly was, because it conflicts with the freedom of speech. You need to, if you think that someone's deity is no good, you should be allowed to say so. It's not. It was blasphemous, but no one actually prosecuted those crimes. The last time the crime is recorded as having occurred was in 2000? No, it was 1998. Last time, 1998, was the last case considered for prosecution, and it wasn't prosecuted. So for, nearly 100 years, this law has been on the statutes, but it's never been invoked. People have committed acts of blasphemous libel, but no one's ever been prosecuted for it since 1922 because it was a bad law. And just last year, that law was repealed. It was thrown out because they finally realised, what is the point in having a law if it serves no purpose? And it's the same with the mandatory observer rule with FPV. Clearly the safety record of people flying FPV without an observer has proven that the mandatory observer rule serves no purpose. If it served a purpose, then all those countless flights without an observer, there would be at least one instance where there was a major problem and people got badly injured or property was damaged, but there hasn't been. There hasn't been. The historical data proves even if you had never looked through goggles, you look at the historical data and go, well, yeah, actually, we don't need that because everybody's ignoring it and nothing bad is happening. And even if you look further, look at things like the decriminalisation of marijuana. For years and years, we've been told marijuana is bad. It's going to lead to, it's a gateway drug and it must be banned and you must be arrested and whatever. And in recent years, we've realised that actually, looking at some of the survey information, over half the population has taken marijuana at some stage. Yet we don't see a whole lot of raving, paranoid sociopaths walking around the cities because they've had a puff on a joint. It hasn't worked that way. The people who made the laws were probably not people who smoked the stuff. They just made crap up to pass a law. That's what happens. So in that respect, countries are increasingly moving towards decriminalising it. And even here in New Zealand, if you're caught in possession of marijuana, which is a crime on the Crimes Act, it's part of the Misuse of Drugs Act, you're not allowed to possess marijuana. If you get caught with a little bit for personal use, nothing happens. The police go, meh, don't do it again. There's no case brought against you because it's realised that this is a law that is archaic and outdated by modern standards. And so it is with the compulsory use of a spotter with FPV. It's archaic and outdated. Sure, way back at the beginning of FPV when we had really, really poor video links, really, really low-res cameras and goggles that were blurry and colour-fringed, maybe you would have wanted to have a spotter. But today, with high-performance analog and especially high-performance digital gear, you're seeing better through the goggles than you're seeing with your eyes. So there's no point in having an observer in many, many cases. So I keep saying this rule should be changed, that when you're flying FPV, an observer must be used when essential to maintain safety. It's got to add when essential to maintain safety. And if it's not essential to maintain safety, you shouldn't need an observer. And so there we go. That's my point on this, my perspective on this thing. Yes, there is a rule. Yes, it appears as if I've broken it. But I'm not encouraging others to break the rule, but I acknowledge, just like with drugs, that people are going to break this rule anyway. And for me to deny that would be absolutely stupid. And for CAA to deny it would be also stupid. They must realise that this is a very, very common thing. Go on YouTube. There are literally tens of thousands of videos of people flying FPV without an observer. Where is the carnage? So the risk is not there. It's been sorely misjudged. And the gear has improved so much that it's even better now than it's ever been. So I would say my role is to show people how to do things safely, even if that is against the rules, just as the government has decided, even though drug paraphernalia and drug taking is against the law, they're going to give the drug addicts free needles for the greater good. That's what I do. I act in the greater good. And I think as for myself and CAA, we are, as I say, we agreed on some things. We disagreed on other things. They still seem very strongly of the mindset that if I do put videos up where I appear to break the rules, they're going to have to take action because otherwise, as I say, it's effectively endorsing rule breaking. I disagree. If that's the case, I think they should go to the police and complain that the Ministry of Health are giving away free needles to drug users. Free needles, free illegal drug paraphernalia is being given to people who use drugs. If you don't think it's a good idea for me to show people how to fly safely when they're going to do things that they would do anyway, then you need to go straight to the Ministry of Health and complain, or complain to the police. Complain to the police that this government organisation is encouraging people to take drugs by giving them free needles. And I think drug taking is a hell of a lot more dangerous than flying one of these. There you go. That's just my little perspective on that. So, as I say, I'll keep you up to date with what else happens. There are still 2 cases in the pipeline being investigated for me, and it's been made pretty clear that if I continue to post videos where it appears that I have broken the rules, then CAA will take action, and I will say, take action. This is where we agree to disagree. If they're not prepared to let me show people how to do things safely, then I don't think I'm the bad guy in this scenario. You tell me, am I or not? There we go. That's it. End of the video. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. You make it all possible. I couldn't do this without your support. And I'll continue promoting and protecting the hobby to the best of my abilities till the day I drop. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now.